Welcome to the AAVMC's Diversity and Inclusion on Air podcast. This podcast is a program of the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges Diversity Matters Initiative. The podcast explores various issues related to diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession and provides the AAVMC an opportunity to offer ongoing diversity programming to our member institutions as well as all veterinary professionals. My name is Dr. Lisa Greenhill. I am the Senior Director for Institutional Research and Diversity at the AAVMC. So on today's show, I have the pleasure of chatting with one of my favorite people in veterinary medicine. She and I have attended countless meetings, had many glasses of red wine. We've talked Old Testament theology in an airport one time. We've discussed ways of getting rid of furniture we no longer need. She's awesome. She's so awesome. She's brilliant. She's funny. And she happens to also be the first African-American woman to be dean of a school of veterinary medicine in the US. Yes, y'all, we are talking to Dr. Ruby Perry of Tuskegee University today. Hi, Ruby.
Well, what a pleasure to talk with you today, Miss Lisa. And yes, we go way back, and it's a pleasure to have you as one of my favorite colleagues as well, because we can agree to disagree,
yes,
but yet have fun at it, which is part of changing things in life in general.
Yes.
And so it is a pleasure to have this chat with you.
Yes.
But just a correction, I do white wine and you do the red wine.
You're right.
So, just for our audience sake.
Yes, just in case, anybody.
And the other thing too is I have to say that my husband doesn't approve of my drinking any alcoholic beverages, but I have to remind him that he was once in the world as well.
Indeed. And yes, if anybody is also interested in our theological question, we both have a love of the book of Job. It's a long story. Anyway, we had a good time with that chat. Anyway, Dr. Perry, Ruby is the 2021 Iverson Bell Awardee. For folks that don't know who Iverson Bell was, he was the first African-American vice president of the American Veterinary Medical Association way back in the day. AAVMC has the Iverson Bell Award. It is given in his memory and in recognition of his outstanding leadership and contributions to the promotion of diversity in veterinary medical education. So, yes, most deserving this year. We're so delighted. Congratulations. We made the award earlier this year in March. And Ruby is always so super busy that here it is August, and I'm just getting her on the show to sit down and chat about her story. So for folks that don't know much about you, Ruby, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, good. I was born in the South in a small town called Tuskegee, Mississippi. It's a town that housed one of the historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, called Tuskegee College. But I spent most of my life in the Midwest in Michigan, actually in East Lansing and Lansing, Michigan, where I worked there for over 22 years. So I actually enjoyed the change of seasons, and I missed the snow, especially a fresh fall of snow on those snow-covered trees. Now, when I was there at Michigan State, I remember a colleague and we were the only ones that would put our background on our computers with snow-covered trees. I didn't enjoy the ice, but the snow in particular. And I just wanted to also say, and you've said it already, that I'm the 7th and first female dean in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Tuskegee University. I'm a veterinary radiologist by discipline. I'm married to a veterinarian who works for USDA FSIS, and he has a love for that part of veterinary medicine. And we have 3 children. 2 decided to stay in Michigan. They did not want to follow us back to the South. So they're in Michigan, and I have 1 in England. And I have 10 grandchildren ranging from ages 2 through 21, 3 boys and 7 girls. And because of the pandemic, which is a good thing, there are some good things that have come out of that, is that we meet every Sunday by Zoom. And we've been doing that for the last couple of, about a year and a half. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
Wow, wow. So, Ruby, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into diversity work, which probably is obvious for some folks, but maybe not everybody. So, how did you end up really kind of, getting on out there and starting to really talk about diversity?
Well, Lisa, while I just reflect a moment while growing up in the South, and I realized at an early age, the obvious inequities of access and opportunities and just plain necessities of living among people, particularly underrepresented minorities, African Americans in particular, of which I experienced directly. I was one of a few Black students from my small town called Tuskegee, who we were taught how to survive in an all-white high school, as we were sent in groups to desegregate a high school in Jackson, Mississippi, which was just a street over from my community. So it was then during that time, and I was in elementary school, where I learned much from the civil rights leaders, and they taught us how to survive, those survival skills in environments that you're going to be faced with hatred and overt racism. And yet you still had to demonstrate the courage to achieve and be successful in spite of those profound challenges and obstacles. So I was introduced to that work in terms of diversity. That's where it started. And even in that high school, I could start seeing the change because there were 6 students in my class, 10th grade at that time. And then I went 10th grade, 11th, and 12th. And then just to see the number of Black students that followed us as part of that effort. And so that's when I realized, okay, I can make a difference in my background, in my training, and what I have experienced, and wanted to do something so that others could make a difference as well.
So then you became a veterinarian.
Well, yes, actually, Dr. Roland Powell, who was a Tuskegee grad, was a veterinarian. So I went to Jackson State University, and actually I wanted to be a mathematician. I love math, I love numbers.
Wow.
And so I worked my way through college. And my mother said, well, we can only do so much. Yeah. So I worked for a veterinarian and I said, oh my gosh, this is an exciting field. So I started cleaning cages and just sort of observed him. He started using me as a vet assistant, and oh my gosh, he was a wonderful advocate. Again, which is part of advocacy and recognizing that, you have those traits and skills that you can develop to be a veterinarian. So he saw that in my interest in how he could, it was almost like a pet whisperer. He could, and I was so intrigued by that, how he could actually take a look at a pet, examine the pet, and then really made a difference in that pet's life. Wow. And so I said, oh my gosh, I think I want to do this. And so I'm one of those late bloomers in terms of my career as a veterinarian. And, the rest is history. So I prepared,
Wow.
I changed my major to biology and got prepared for veterinary medicine and started that journey.
Wow. Wow. So for folks that are watching and listening, exposure works. Like exposure
Yes.
programming works.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I might not have a chance to say this when we talk about different various journeys, and we know that our journey is convoluted. We don't have a straight journey to our outcome of what we're going to achieve in life. It's going to be convoluted. It's what you do on that convoluted journey.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finished veterinary school, here I go again. I wanted to be a surgeon. And then, and this is where I'm going to throw in Pat Lowry's name and Dr. Dave's name, because then Mrs. Lowry came to me when I finished my internship and she said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to Michigan State for residency in radiology." And I said, "Oh, I don't think so. Number one, I haven't been out the South, and I don't like the snow. I don't like the cold weather." And she just said, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be just fine." So one day, the next thing I knew, I was on a plane to Michigan. And that was another wonderful journey as well, because he prepared me for my my academic life and my leadership life. So I took advantage of that convoluted journey as well.
Really, she like recruited you into radiology too.
Yeah, because sometimes people see
something in you.
something in us that we don't see in ourselves. And so they have to just help us as champions and advocates to say, you know what, you have this skill, you have this art, you have this potential, you just need to develop it. And I had already learned about being courageous. I didn't know what to expect. I had some challenges there as well.
Sure.
But I had to overcome those and stay focused on what I wanted to be. And going through veterinary school, I didn't even like radiology. It's like, oh my God, I thought it was so difficult. But then I realized, oh my gosh, I have a passion for making students see on that two images of what they couldn't see. And it just reminded me of back on my experience with desegregation. Is I was taught then to survive. How do you make a person see what they don't see that is best for the good, the common good? And so and so I enjoyed that. It was like another discovery. And here, that was another journey that I really enjoyed.
What a wonderful nugget, because I'm not sure in all of my years of hanging around that I have heard someone encapsulate their love, their passion for their specialty area and tying it to kind of this experience of diversity, like in this in that work, and kind of helping to create spaces and things where folks learn to see what they couldn't see before, right? The realities of life, right? So how did you then, through all of this, certainly I'm sure that all of the experiences that you brought from Mississippi kind of tag along right along with you. So, how did you kind of really get into diversity and inclusion work within the, your career, which was, it's been robust, and, you've been a busy woman many years in veterinary medicine. And so, how did diversity and inclusion work really kind of fit into that? Okay,
so and along my convoluted professional veterinary career, actually it adds an adventure, and as veterinarians or it's professionals, there is always that that discovery. What can I do better the next time? How can I change that the next time? So along this convoluted professional veterinary career, I find myself solo by myself relative to race, or one of a very few, might be not just me, but others in the diversity space. So first of all, I realize that it's not mentally or professionally healthy to represent an entire race or represent diversity in an organization. But, when I went to Michigan State, I had to realize that, even though I don't want to, but I do, I have to tackle those microaggressions and the macroaggressions. And at that time, they weren't called micro and macro, they were just called subtle racism. But when I noticed that many of those went unnoticed. I recognized some of those, but there were persons there that also recognized, but they didn't do much about it because there were no repercussions. So you needed someone of courage to be able to say, you know what, you need to recognize that. You need to be the advocate for somebody who can't be so in these spaces themselves. So just for those simple reasons, diversity and inclusion are so very important in the enrichment of my veterinary career. And even though I might have not done that just so good, just as well as I could have to make a difference, and I wasn't successful all the time. Were there tears and words, choice words I had to make? Absolutely. But I always remembered my training, and for those persons who were my advocates and my champions, to say, you know what, you can do this, you can make it. Because there were times when I wanted to give up, but I know that work is so important, and it's so beneficial, and it's so rewarding. And so I wanted to continue to see where else could I make those such an impact. And so I am also sure that I share the same sentiments as others who've been excluded because of race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, and other groups. So we may never understand why people who are different than ourselves or excluded, intentionally excluded, or treated badly, but we know what is morally right. We just do not exercise doing the right thing. So once you know it's morally right, then you have to be courageous to make a difference. So for me, I plan to be impactful until death do us part. Oh, that sounds like something at marriage. Okay, so that's a commitment of being impactful for change and in our beloved veterinary profession, which my career is a part of. And I must change to be a more diverse and more inclusive, as I do as a veterinarian, and all veterinarians also.
Sure. So what do you think have been some of the most impactful things that you've been engaged in with respect to diversity and inclusion over the life of your career?
Well, if I can start with as an advocate for students, I can start there, because our students are our best product of what we do. And if I go back to Michigan State and remember the students that I was an advocate for, some of the things, and I'm not going to share some of those the examples,
sure,
but I can just overall say that I started there as an advocate for students, and particularly female students. And I did the same thing when I did my first journey at Tuskegee as well, is how, if a student is experiencing some adverse environment, and they just need someone to talk to, And here we go. I'm a Black female now, and these are white students, but I didn't look at the racial piece. That's a student. And so I started there. So so I look back then as students and being in the role that I am in now, my impact on colleagues and women in particular, and how they, and it depends on their environments and how they have sometimes feel that they can't do a leadership role. But yes, they can. But it's always good to have someone, being there for your support to say, yes, you can. Yes, you can do this. But no one wants to jump out there by themselves. And this saying about I have your back.
Yeah.
And then you look back and you go, gosh, you are way back. You're not really right behind me. You are way, how far back are you? So sometimes it's difficult to take that lead without that, the support people to say, I'm right there with you. And then I think once we feel that and know that, then it's just that you get that energy and you just start moving ahead.
Yeah, that is so great. It really is. It's just so great. And you're right. Yeah, that when folks say that, I got your back, and they're like 2 miles back there, might not be as helpful, I think, as, when you started out assuming that you had more support, right? And so it's so important to, when you say you have somebody's back, to actually be able to see their back.
At least be able to, and then, you get this other thing too, is that when you call when you have true advocates and true champions, they are truly there for you, and they're far and few. And so we have to really cherish those persons, and that everybody who say they're your advocate or champion is not. But you can test that, because when you really need them and you call them, they go, I'm busy right now. Can you call me tomorrow? And then tomorrow never gets there. So, you can just let that one go. But you have to reach and search those advocates and champions also. They're there. You just got to find them. So I was able to find many of them at Michigan State also. And that's why I survived there for over 22 years. And I had fun along the way. It's one of those where when you know that you're good at something, you're good at something. And, there is, you will land in a good space.
Oh, that's great. So Ruby, tell me what it was like to find out that you were the 2021 Iverson Bell Award recipient.
Well, that was a day that I was shocked and surprised, and I get so busy fulfilling my own purpose of helping others to achieve their professional aspirations, and I get a joy out of that. And I don't think about myself. I really don't. And when you're doing things, it's your purpose. When you fulfill your purpose and you enjoy what you do, you really don't think about yourself. And sometimes I do have to stop and go, you know what, I need to tell other people what I'm doing. But I get engulfed in my work, of which I so enjoy, and I'm inspired by others to even do more. So when I received such awesome news, I was first of all, I was humbled with gratitude and overjoyed that I was recognized by my peers and my colleagues for my contributions that I see as a part of my daily work. And so to be recognized by the work of Dr. Iverson Bell, he was a solo too, in his leadership work in diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession. So I was honored to receive it. And it just reminds me that I am okay, I'm good with the work that I'm doing, and I'm going to strive to make a lasting difference. And I remember in that letter that I received from Dr. McCabe, it didn't say just make a difference. It says make a lasting difference and move the needle for change, regardless of how much the impact that it makes. And some people think that I can do this work and make a huge impact. No, you make a lasting impact or lasting difference. It could be small. And I have this thing where you be a raindrop, because one raindrop, then another raindrop, and it makes a puddle. Then the puddle makes a larger puddle, and then it makes a stream, then it makes a river, then it makes an ocean. So those are the impacts that we all can make as raindrops.
Wow, that's beautiful. So, Ruby, what would you like to see more of related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in veterinary medicine? What would you, if you could just kind of whip out a pad and give us all instructions on what to do next, what would you like to see more of?
I would like to see, people of influence more involved or engaged in the actual work of diversity and inclusion, and not just talk about it or just make a one-time impact. And I'm going to go back to that lasting impact. As I stated before, is that we are the least diverse. Why do we don't want to carry that? What can we do to start correcting that? So we can correct the wrong that we know and we see. So if everybody, each person decides that, especially when you see it, my gosh, does that keep you up at night when you see somebody who is misused or abused, I'm not talking about physical, I'm talking about mental. I mean, there's a lot of mental abuse going on, and how can you just not do anything about it? And even me in my own diverse environment, and there are a lot of women, I have to look up and say, well, where are the men? I have to be more conscious, intentional about having a diverse outcome, a diverse environment. And it's easy to just reach out to those we know and to see every day. It's so easy. And forget about those people from various backgrounds that we need to seek out. So you have to say, oh my gosh, this looks so homogeneous. What can I do? What are the opportunities that I can provide to someone else? Because they bring another level of contribution that we would never think of, because we're so surrounded by who we see every day. And so if I could just say, what I would take persons from various backgrounds and inclusion, etc., and then just drop them into those spaces. But of course, I can't do that. But you asked me if I could.
Yes.
If I could. If you could. But what would happen? They would go, oh my gosh, I wish I had seen that before. And then the development of the collegiality and what they bring to those spaces. Oh my gosh. Then they recognize that this is good. Because the inclusion with their contributions, their presence, their perspectives, coming from different perspectives in what they do, and bring that into the environment. Oh my gosh, how great is that? And not just see it as a token. Oh my gosh, come on, let's not see it as a token. These are people who bring greatness and to the organization that you would never think of unless they are put there. But you have to make sure that environment is conducive to them and their growth. So
I hear a couple of things in your want to see more of. So I'm hearing you want to see more leaders be courageous and step up and stick a leg out there. Stick a leg out there and do some work, really kind of get in there. But also this the opportunity to learn to see the things, echoing back your earlier comments of seeing things that you didn't see before, and making, and then not just seeing them, but then making the necessary corrections to create that more hospitable place. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, we all want to see more of that. So how long have you been at Tuskegee now? And tell us about your role as dean and kind of how, yeah, tell us all about Tuskegee.
Okay, well, let's see. When I left Michigan State, I've been at Tuskegee. This is my second journey at Tuskegee. So I've been like a ping pong ball. When I left Michigan State after I stayed on for a year, and then came to Tuskegee from 82 to 88. Then I went back to Michigan State and just enjoy both of those spaces. So when I arrived at Tuskegee on my second trip in 2007, I was recruited as the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. And I thought at that time, I said, okay, I want to try something different, but stay in the veterinary profession and see how I can impact the professionals, the faculty and the staff, not just faculty, but staff as well, and continue the impact on students. So it was then that I realized that there were barriers in a diverse environment.
Yeah.
I was taken aback when I found that I was, as my career and what I had achieved, that there were some barriers with women in leadership roles. And so I said, okay, here we go again. Go back to my training, is that I've got to change that. So I worked through those barriers by learning more about the culture. I'm thinking, okay, this is a different culture in the college and at the university. So I found ways to impact change for other women to follow. So of course it took, again, a lot of courageous conversations and asking okay, now I don't understand why they're doing it this way, but how do I make a change with that? Well, of course, I had to volunteer for committees that I wanted to impact. Again, more work on my plate, but if you're going to make a change, that's what you got to do. And you've got to be in a position so that your voice can be heard. Your voice can be heard, and you put people on notice in a very collegial kind of way. And of course, I did a lot of laughing and smiling. That's what keeps me going from day to day. And so I demonstrated to them that I could really be effective as a leader. And when I had that opportunity, I made sure that I was effective, so they could see the outcome. So I was very proud of removing some of those barriers. And then where it got me was to the dean. And so when I was appointed dean, and that was another, and for those of us who presented with these opportunities, Lisa, I'm just saying it is not easy.
Yeah.
That you even question your own ability. You question, oh my God, can I really do this? But when it keeps coming back to you, it's like, okay, I'm gonna try it. I see it as a carousel. You're on the carousel, and if you can jump off the carousel at some point and look from a distance sometimes, and you say, okay, is that what I really want to do? And if it really keeps coming back to you, get back on and give it a go again. So when I became dean, one of my first initiatives was to develop a diversity and inclusion committee of faculty, staff, and students, because we have such a diverse environment. But I just listening to faculty, staff, and students, I don't think we had a good grasp on diversity in our own diverse space. Yeah. So that committee is ongoing and actively engaged in D&I activities to not only increase awareness of the importance of diversity, but how can we be even more inclusive in our own spaces? So I am, and the other thing is I am constantly encouraging faculty and staff to develop themselves as potential leaders.
Yeah.
And that leadership is not for everybody, but there are a lot of people who have leadership abilities that they just don't recognize that they can do it. So I see it, I go, you know what, you should try such and such. And I'm not sure. Okay, here, how about this development opportunity? Okay, some of the junior faculty, I've been able to give scholarships for them to go back and maybe do another degree. And so I try to develop them for these leadership roles, because we're lacking of people. People just want to do status quo. Just, oh, well, I'm good, I'm fine. But we need some brave leaders that can, because we need that.
Yeah.
In the veterinary profession.
Yeah. Brave leaders. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm so glad that you talked about diversity challenges at a historically Black college, because I think that for folks that have never been on a campus, never visited an HBCU or other minority serving institution, that that there's this kind of diversity utopia. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not. Some of the diversity issues might look different, but they're the same issues, just they just look a little different.
That is correct. We have international faculty, and we have some international students, and they come from different cultures.
Yeah.
And just because we all people of color don't mean that we understand that.
Yes.
And so why, and then, when we used to have our holiday celebrations, really, there's some things that you have to be more conscious of in what you say. And so, yeah, we had to have some training. Our very first activity was for people from different backgrounds to share their various cultures. And it was an eye-opening for many people, and why their culture is like it is. And it was enjoyable to hear, and then recognize that we have to be more conscious, that we are, just because I was born in the South don't mean that everybody's going to act like Southerners, etc. And you get students from all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah.
So just because you got people from the East Coast that have to recognize their differences on the West Coast, North and South.
Yeah.
So we all got to work together. So we all of color, Black, but there's differences even within that culture that we
absolutely
have to recognize.
And then once we start layering on, intersectional kind of identities, like to your point, so you get to Tuskegee and you find that there's some gender barriers there, right? Race may not be the number one issue, but then here, okay, so we're still dealing with the patriarchy here, okay? Let's.
Right, and as you know, the South is the Bible Belt.
Yes.
And
yes.
So we have to learn how to be inclusive.
Right.
And so that's very important in this environment. Oh, yes.
Because I know under your leadership, I know that the students, were able to start an LGBT plus group at Tuskegee. And again, and especially in Southern Bible Belt, even among African Americans, on issues of queerness, the population can be pretty conservative about that, right? And so, I think that, I do, I'm glad that you kind of opened that up, because I do think that sometimes people think that minority serving institutions, which are really important entrees into higher education and beyond for a lot of folks in this country, but folks kind of assume outside looking in, that must be just a diversity utopia, and good on them. So we'll just go over here and go work here. No, everybody's got to do work. So yeah. So what are some of the things that you're working on now? DEI. I know you're busy. What are you working on, Ruby?
well, so from the veterinary profession, and you know this already, but I'll just say this, and for the people on this podcast. But I am serving as co-chair with my colleague, Dr. Christine Jenkins, and so we're co-chairing the AVMA AAVMC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. And it includes members, and we also have advisory members or advisory board also. You know, this group was formed with the commitment from Dr. Doug Kratt, who is the president, outgoing president of AVMA, and Dr. Mark Markell, who is the outgoing president of AAVMC. And so, you know, now I talk about that, you know, that's the first commitment for change, is that starts at the top.
Yeah.
And because they were committed to changing that landscape, they formed this commission. And so the overall goal is to develop a roadmap change to assist schools and colleges of veterinary medicine, veterinarians, you know, VMAs, animal health industry, and other affinity groups, you know, to work together. How can we work together to change the landscape of the veterinary profession that is labeled as the least diverse of all the healthcare professions? And we want to get rid of that stigma. Now, if it's true, it is true. We know that. That's true. Now, let's accept that. No, we're not going to accept it. We're going to recognize that it is, and then we're going to find ways to change it. And that's a start. You know, as you and I have said now, and I'm going to say this. First of all, let me say this. We know that the future of veterinary medicine is strengthened by the diversity of its members. That has been demonstrated. But Black folk are not the ones to change it. It is white folk and other folk that need to change that, because they're the ones that's standing in their own way. We are there to assist.
Yeah.
We're here. And so I have to constantly remind people that in your own spaces, if you look around and you see that there is no diversity, there is no inclusiveness, then you got to make that change.
Yeah, you got to see it and make that change. But yeah, this is something I tell people often, that, you know, marginalized peoples, whether it's by race or gender, like, you know, certainly we can work and advocate and do all the things to push things forward. But this is a problem that directly affects us, but it's actually not our problem. We cannot, we can go charging up the hill over and over again, but unless dominant culture, whether it is, you know, white or straight or male or urban, whatever it is, like that dominant culture has to make a choice.
Yes.
To be more inclusive, to, change and evolve the ways that they engage with other people. And that includes, and certainly each of us have areas of privilege, right? So we're both educated, and certainly there are some correlations. We might have been one socioeconomic class, many, many years ago, but we are in a different class now. And there are certainly privileges that accrue with that, but we're also still walking, with certain identities that we're just born with, and this is just how it is. And, and we're subjected to things because of that. And so, helping people see that, I think is our job. Helping people, think of ways and move the needle to become more inclusive, but also to really practice equity and inclusion and belonging and all of those things. But again, this is a problem that affects us.
Right. We are affected by it, but people, and I hear this. And we could take a moment to talk about this. Well, we can't find any people of color. We can't find any Black people. Well, you can't ask another person look like you for folk. So if I wanted to find more people from another culture, another ethnic group, or inclusive, how about asking those people? Then they would find them for you rather than, well, because it's easy to just say that. It's so easy to say that. And then if you're looking to recruit specialists, when how about somebody training and educating them so you could have a pool? You know, that was one really good outcome that Michigan State did under Pat Lowry, is that many of us were trained at Michigan State. And so we had a really good pool of specialists, board certified specialists that other colleges and universities could pull from. But that pipeline has dried up. So there's, and so we know what works. We just have to realize and do the work.
Yeah.
And again, it's just not just Black people. We people in the seat, in the leadership role got to do that.
Yes. Leaders have to step up, and dominant groups have to step up, right? Yeah. So what has been the most rewarding chapter in your career?
There's so many, because I can, I'll just say this, is that I have served in every leadership role in higher education. And when I went back and when I was doing my PhD in educational leadership, that's when I realized, you know what, I think in order to make a lasting difference and impact change, I need to be in a position where I can do that. And so I paid for that degree by myself, and indebtedness, indebted, as you know, because you were back in yours as well, and we were struggling through that. Oh my gosh! But let me tell you, I said to myself, so you asked me about most rewarding, and I've had so many. I just they're just so many, but I think the most impactful one just recently was going back and get a PhD. And I wondered why, and I don't need a PhD. Why am I doing this? But then I realized later, and I'm going to leave with this, is that sometimes when opportunities are presented to us, and sometimes we don't understand why, it will reveal itself later. So as dean and PhD students who go through what they have to go through, and they're complaining, I say, listen, let me share with you my experience, and yes, you can do this. And I didn't realize that now I can be on a PhD committee because of that. And then helping those students that want to give up. I got my DVM because I do the help with the DVM students. But all it did was it exposed me to a different world that I could still impact change. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that at the time. And so again, another convoluted journey that I took, and it's a different environment of where I can impact change in graduate programs.
I mean, it is. We definitely had a lot of overlap in our programs. We talked a lot. It's not easy, and it's definitely not easy when you got a few years under your belt and a job. Right. But I also want our listeners and viewers to know that Dean Perry is also she alluded to, I've served in all of these different roles in higher ed. And then she didn't, she just kind of glossed over the fact that, she has also served as an interim president of the university. And so she has these rich experiences that, so many students get to benefit from because of your ability one, you're just one of the kindest people I've ever met, and just so, oh, my heart. I love you so much, Ruby, but you're so sweet, but you have these experiences that allow you to so deeply relate to not just your students, but your colleagues and those folks that you are serving as leader to. And you are an amazing servant leader. I know that about you. And I mean, I just want to say personally, thank you for being a part of my journey in this profession. And, you know, there are definitely quite a long list of folks that have welcomed me as a non-veterinarian to continue to hang around. And in the same way that you bounce back and forth between, you know, Tuskegee and Michigan State, I have bounced back and forth to the association as well. But, you know, I just really want you to know that even prior to, of course, this important recognition with the Iverson Bell Award, I just want you to know that the lasting impact that you've had with me is amazing, and that I have taken that and hopefully shared it with other people. So I just want you to know that. Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to thank you too, Lisa, for your being a part of my journey as well. I've learned a lot from you, and I don't know a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have lived the experience. I can only talk about the experience, and I'm not, you know, and so in my learning, and I talk about that in my learning and wanting to do more, is I have also I also want to do a course. You know, I want to take an online course to learn about strategies of DE&I. How do I recognize some things that I can do better or make an impact? Because you know that saying is, when you know better, you do better. I don't know if that's a Black thing, a phrase, or whatever that might be, but it's true across the board. When you know better, you do better, and you want to learn and do that. So I appreciate your teaching me all of those. I remember when I first heard the word BIPOC, like, what in the world is that?
What is that?
And it's okay, for our audience, we probably need to define that.
Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So it is a distinctly kind of American acronym, if you will, to recognize the unique experience of Black folk in the US, but also our Indigenous kinfolk. And I think that, you know, I predicted that language will continue to evolve, because, you know, some folks are not all that cool with, like, okay, well, 2 groups get a shout out, and how about the rest of us are just kind of in this like POC thing. But that is a part of the current lexicon. And yeah, I've had to explain that to a lot of people. What is that?
But it's a joy to be on this journey together with you as well. And likewise. And you stay encouraged and be inspired for your voice as well, that you are also well respected. And I'm humbled and honored to even be with you on this podcast, so that we can share our own experiences. You have a journey to share as well. And so I want to thank you for being a part of my convoluted journey also.
Thank you so much, Ruby. So I guess I'm gonna bring this love fest to an end. So this has been another episode of AAVMC's Diversity and Inclusion on Air. To my guest, Dean Ruby Perry of the School of Veterinary Medicine at Tuskegee University. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your very, very busy schedule to chat with me today.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a good day.
Thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app and like us on Facebook. And be sure to stay tuned to the next episode. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.
Bye.